Coming from the great American Southwest, from the very low desert, good morning, good evening, whatever the case may be to all my listeners out here. Once again, we are back for another exciting episode, blessed be here by the Lord Jesus Christ himself. And tonight, guest is Darrell Denton. He is a Bigfoot cryptid researcher. This man is a man of God. He's a Christian. And this makes this episode more exciting because you're getting this point of view of these creatures from a Christian perspective. Not some kind of, these people that don't believe in God and think aliens, made us. We're hearing it from a Christian man, and he's been doing this longer than I've been alive. He's also good friends with Ron Moorhead. We did another episode with Ron Moorhead not too long ago, so go ahead and look for that episode if you want to catch up on who these men are. But long story short, these men are men of God, and both these gentlemen at some point never went looking for these things. These things found them, and it changed their life. Something so profound where you spend your entire life trying to figure out what these things are. A lot of people don't understand what that does to someone. It doesn't have to just be that. It could be another situation. Maybe you had a near-death experience and you saw heaven or hell. That changes you forever. That's why these people dedicate their entire life after these experiences and try to figure out what it is. And this is one of those situations. And I've never heard a story about Bigfoot or Dogman the way this man encountered these creatures. This is the first time I heard any of this, just the powers that they have and the things that they do to you. It's wild. Just listen to the episode, pay attention. You're in for a wild ride. So with that being said, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, follow us on all our social media platforms, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and X. We are on all platforms. And also, if you have your own testimony like this gentleman, we would love to hear it. Email me at sabbathatmidnight@icloud.com. Check the bio for my YouTube. You'll see my email. And also, I respond faster on Instagram in a DM. So go ahead and hit me up there. So with that being said, let's move forward. As I always say, let's get ready for this show. Go ahead, grab yourself a coffee, turn the lights down, turn the volume up, kick your feet up, hit the head if you have to so you don't miss anything. And let's make it very dark in the room. Let's do this in a very type of midnight type of vibe. And let's get ready for a very exciting episode. Welcome back, everybody. I'm your host, Lance of Ars from the Sabbath at Midnight, here to bring you another exciting episode. And tonight's guest we have on, he goes by the name of Darrell Denton. And just a little bit about him before I have him introduce himself. I'll always like to give a little bit of information. So Darrell Denton, a longtime Bigfoot and cryptid researcher who says his journey into the unknown started after a personal encounter back in 1992. Since then, he's investigated sightings across Virginia, Tennessee, and the land between the lakes, looking into reports of Bigfoot, Dogman, and what locals call the Woodbooger, right? Yeah. So I'm very interested what that is. And tonight, we're going to hear about these encounters and what he believes is really out there in the forest and out there in the wild, and just get his perspective on it. So without further ado, go ahead and introduce yourself, sir, and tell us where to find all your stuff. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Thanks for having me on. I do a special radio show with my close best friend Ron Moorhead on Monday nights. It's called Two Real Cryptid Legends, and I have a Bigfoot Facebook group called Bigfoot Believers and Other Creatures. We're a non-discriminatory group. We don't allow any criticism or rudeness, and we've been around for quite a while. We have a huge group, over 70,000 members. It's a private group. You do have to be invited or asked to come in. My first encounter started in 1992, like you said. It was first of all, my team consists of that I only research with Ron Moorhead, my best friend Martin Groves, Mike Smith, and Barton Nunley. That's the team that I operate with, mainly out of the LBL. We have research Virginia, West Virginia, Kentucky, very part of Ohio, and a part of Alabama. So we've done quite a bit of areas with them and with some other folks also, but mainly with my team is about all I do research with now. And mainly in the land between the lakes of Tennessee and Kentucky. But my encounter was started in my whole journey started in November the 6th, 1992. My grandfather had a very rural farm in Cannon County, Tennessee. It's a little town called Woodbury. It's about 96 miles from Nashville. My granddad had lived on that property all of his life, and we deer hunted there. I grew up on that farm. I hunted there all my life, and for about everything you can think of, from birds to rabbits to deer. And I'd never seen anything on that property that I didn't know what it was, and I surely wasn't one of those guys that scare too easy. I camped in those woods deep in when I was a kid, 12, 14 years old. And this particular day was November the 6th. We arrived on November the 5th, and three of my friends, every year we went up there when I pulled my camper. I had a big camper, an RV, and we'd set it up next to my grandfather's barn and run the electricity to it. And two of my other buddies pulled their truck. I pulled our trailer with their truck, and we all had ATVs on it. Each one of us had one, and there was four of us there. And I'd hunted with these guys on that particular property the last 5 or 6 years at that time, and we were there every week of opening day of black powder, which is we call muzzleloader in Tennessee, but it opens up on a Monday and goes through Sunday. And that was the day we arrived, was the Sunday before opening day, and we all went out in the woods. We had tree stands built there in different areas. We had a massive area that we could hunt. It was probably about 5 square miles. And part of it was my grandfather's land, and it was adjoining farms next to him that he was very close with those folks, and they allowed us to hunt on their property also. And we had a lot of tree stands we built, but we also carried our climbing stands in. That particular Sunday when we arrived, I told my granddad I was mainly looking for a trophy deer, and standing on his back porch, he pointed up to 3 hilltops way off in the distance, and he said, "You see that hill with that tree bent over?" And I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "I would go there because there's probably been nobody in that hollow in 30 years. That's my old home place. I was born in that hollow. There's an old remnants of our cabin there. It's fallen in now, but you'll see the chimney and part of the tin roof. And there's part of an old grist mill there. And so you'll know when you're there. And it's about a 45-minute to an hour hike from his back porch. You go through a field behind his house where the cows were. He kept his cows, about a 200-acre wide sage field and probably 400 or 500 yards long, fenced in where his cows couldn't get out. And then you crossed a barbed wire fence, and it went straight up a hill. And when I say a hill, these hills are like 45 degrees, and they're strong. It's a good climb to get to them, and I had to go over 2 of those to get to the last one, which bordered the creek where the old grist mill was, and the clearing in the woods where my grandfather told me to go. And that Sunday, I went over there and carried my stand and got to that spot and found exactly where he was telling me, and found a good tree on the side of the hill. And I had a climbing stand on my back that I carried in, and I put the blade around the tree and tightened the wing nut, and same thing with the seat, and climbed up in the tree and leaned back. I normally go up about 28 feet, and I know the distance because I have a rope that's tied to my belt loop that goes down to a hook a utility hook that I hooked my gun to pull it up, and that rope from my belt loop to that hook is 28 feet. And I get up there and I lean back and I cut a few limbs off behind me and have a place to put my pack the next morning and my lunch that I'd hang up there, and also my fanny pack that had a couple rounds of Hornady bullets for a muzzle loader and some powder and some igniter. So I got up and got it all ready, came down and walked across the creek in front of me. It was about knee-high deep, probably 10 or 12 foot wide. There's a game trail on the other side of it on top of the ridge, and found all kinds of signs, deer scrapes and everything else, and looked like a really good spot. A lot of rubs from where a buck had been rubbing over in that area. So a lot of acorns on the ground this year. It was a real heavy harvest, and that area was just loaded with acorns from the trees. And I had a drag rag on my boot, which is an elastic strap you put around your hunting boot, and it has a little rag on the back of it, and you put deer scent on it, which is called doe and estrus. It helps attract the buck deer. And I took that off, and you walk in the woods with it, and it kind of covers your scent up. Plus, it also gives another deer that crosses that will a lot of times follow that scent. And I reached up and grabbed a limb, and that would come out from this large oak tree. And it was probably about, I'm 6'5", and when I raised my arm all the way up, it's a little over 8 foot. And I tied that drag rag with the elastic around the end of that limb and let it go up, and it kind of fluctuates the sail on that hollow the entire night, and hopefully it would draw something in by the next morning or when I'm set up the next morning. So I hit it on back and got back to my grandfather's farm and went out to my camper. My buddies had set up a grill. They were about ready to cook some dinner, and we were just having a good time together. My grandfather stayed out there with us for a while until he went in, and I said, make sure you wake me up about early in the morning, 5:30, and I'll do it. And my granddad always called me boy. He never called me by my name. We were super close. He was, I lived with my granddad till I was about 5 or 6, so I went to school. Then I stayed with him during the summer to help him with his crops. And next morning he come down and knocked on the side of my camper, and I heard him, and I got my black powder rifle and my pack and my coat on, and I headed that way, and went through his backyard down to a gate. You open the gate, and then you go through this roughly 200-yard wide field where his cows were. There was a lot of sage in it, tall grass, and get to the other side, and you meet a fence, and it has 3 strands of barbed wire on top of that fence. And I climbed up over that metal fence, jumped over the barbed wire into the leaves, and started walking up the first hill. I made a couple steps, and I heard something walking to the left of me, and kind of startled me because it sounded like bipedal, it sounded like a person walking. And I stopped, and I turned around with my flashlight and shined in that direction, and didn't see anything, and shined it again and didn't see anything. And I was a little startled by that because I knew nobody'd be hunting in there. All my friends were in different directions, and they would never be in there. And Granddad sure wouldn't let anybody hunt over there while we were there. So I continued on up the hill with that on my mind. I didn't hear it anymore there. And by the time I got over the top of the last hill, I'm going down the hill, and pretty exhausted because these hills are, like I said, they're about 45-degree angles, and they're about a good 120 yards from bottom to top. So you're a little gassed when you get to the top of one of them. And I had to cross 3 of them. And I get down, I'm coming almost to the bottom where I'm trying to find the stand. I found the creek, and I hear something walking up on the top of the hill I just came down from, and it's loud. It sounds like a large person. It made 3 or 4 steps. I quickly turned my light and shined on top of the hill, and I had a real small light, but it was real bright, and it would cover a couple hundred yards. It was a really good small lamp, and didn't see anything, and I kept shining it there, thinking it would move, and I never seen anything. So I hurriedly got on around the hill at the bottom there next to the creek, and got my feet in my climbing stand, and I sat back in my stand and climbed to the top of the tree, pulled my gun up, leaned back where the bar will bite into the tree where it won't move. I put my safety strap around me that was already in the tree above me, tied to a limb. And I had a little camo cover that was in front of me, a little bar that pulled out right above my neck, and it dropped all the way down. And I pulled that out. It can pretty much conceals you from below your neck all the way down past your feet. I had my gun pulled up, and I put it against the bar that held the camo cover, and kind of leaned back to make sure I was dug in good, and I was ready for the hunt. Just sitting there quietly. It was still dark. Listening, it was real quiet. I did not hear anything else walk. Daylight come along a little while later, and normal things. I hear squirrels running across the ground, and birds and different things that you hear in the morning in the quiet woods. And I looked down across the creek, and I couldn't see across the creek in front of me because the fog was real heavy that morning. It had went from the 50s to the mid-20s that first morning, and the fog was thick. I couldn't see across the creek, and about 8 that morning probably, I had an old Iron Man watch on, and I used to push a button on it. It was a stopwatch button. Anytime I seen a deer, and that way I would know the next time when I went in there what time the deer normally come in that area. And I remember looking down. It was a little after 8 when the fog finally cleared, and I could see the other side. I could see the drag rag hanging in the tree. I could see the spot where I'd seen the deer rubs and scrapes at, and I'm just sitting there. I'm ready for the hunt, and it's it's quiet except for the little small animals running around in the leaves. And all of a sudden, to my left, there's a large cane thicket, and these are like bamboo-looking things. We call them cane in Tennessee. They grow 14, 15 foot tall, and they get 3 or 4 inches round. They're big, and they're a cane, and the whole side of that bank from the left there to me was a cane thicket all the way down the side of that creek. It went around a bend. I couldn't really see how far it went, but I seen something moving over around the cane thicket, and out come 3 deer. And the lead deer was a large doe. Female is a doe, in case someone there doesn't know. A buck is a male deer. And female doe came out, walked through the creek, walked up the bank of the creek onto the game trail on top of it. 2 younger ones followed her up onto the game trail, and she walked right down the game trail close to where I had put that drag rag, the tree there, and she was eating acorns. And they were just milling around like deer do, taking their hoof and pushing the leaves back, and kind of rooting for acorns that had fallen. And I watched them for a good while as they eat, and they gently just walked around, and they didn't never see me or have any idea I was there. I'm in a tree now, like 45-degree angle on the side of this hillside, straight up. I'm almost looking over the creek from the angle I was. I wasn't over the creek, but I almost was looking that way. And I'm watching these deer, and they turn to the left, and they're looking toward that cane thicket, and all of a sudden the large female doe, I figured she was probably the mother of these 2 younger ones, she completely freezes, just froze. She's looking right at that cane thicket, and the other 2 deer, I looked, one to the right was doing the same thing. The younger one, the one to the left of her, kind of behind her, she was staring right at the cane thicket, not moving at all. And I've seen that before, and it normally means they've seen something moving, or there's a buck or another deer coming out of there, or it could possibly even be a coyote or something. But something's caught their attention, and they're being very still to see what it is and what it would do. And she just kept staring at that area and just like froze for probably a couple of minutes. And then her ears started to twitch a little bit, and she raised her right front hoof and pawed the ground 3 times, looking right at the cane thicket. and then quietly stood there and didn't move for a little longer, and nothing happened. I couldn't see anything in the cane thicket from where I was sitting. And then she raises her nose and she lets out this really large blowing sound. Sounds like somebody almost sneezing, except it's a lot louder, and it echoed down that hollow I was overlooking. So nothing moved, but she was spooked, and I could tell she was. And all of a sudden, she turns to the right and runs as fast as she can right in front of me, right straight across down that game trail right in front of me. And she's running like somebody has shot at her, and I couldn't figure out what was going on here. And the other two deer followed in right behind her, and I watched them run until they run off into the hardwoods and disappeared. And I'm thinking, okay, here comes a big buck deer, a large male out of this thicket, and here comes a big one. And I'm looking over toward the cane thicket. I'm not seeing anything. And then all of a sudden, toward the back of the cane thicket, I start seeing the cane moving, like a section of it, like 5 or 6 pieces. And it's moving all the way to the front. Something's coming through this cane thicket, and I'm sitting there thinking, wow, this is a big buck to make this cane move like this. And it gets to the edge of it, and it stops, and the cane's not moving, and then all of a sudden it steps out. And when it steps out, it takes one step, and it jumps, clears the creek, 10 or 12 foot, lands on the game trail on top, turns to the right, walks right down the game trail, right in front of me, gets almost to me, stops and turns and looks right at me. It knew exactly where I was at. It knew I was in the tree. Then I knew that's what I heard. I'd never seen anything like this. A complete, I was absolutely scared to death. I had never seen anything like that. This thing looked at me. It showed me its teeth, gritted them at me numerous times, looking at me, and it was really mad. One side of its mouth was kind of out of contortion to the right, and it was just so, I could tell this thing was really angry with me being there. Then it starts growling. And it was a low guttural growl that I've heard before since then, but not quite as intense as this one. This creature was really mad at me and did not want me there. It then stops growling and walks about 5 foot to that tree limb that had the drag rag hanging in it. It reaches up, pulls it down, smells of it, then rips the entire tree limb out of the tree. This wasn't a massive tree limb. It was probably 3 inches round at the base where it went into the tree, but it was maybe 7, 8, 9 foot out from the tree. Just ripped that completely off the tree and threw it on the ground. Came right back to where it was at, started staring at me again. And I'm thinking, this thing's going to kill me. I'd never seen anything like that. I'd never heard of anything like that. And it was really mad. And by this time, it was huffing and puffing and growling and staring at me. And I'm thinking, well, I got one shot with this 50 caliber bullet with this muzzle loader, black powder ball. And if I shoot this thing and it doesn't kill it, it's just going to make it mad. And it's going to come across that creek and it's going to pull me completely out of this tree. And I was trying to make my mind up what to do. I remember very distinctly, just like it happened a minute ago, I was just trying to breathe. I was so in shock that this thing was standing there looking like it was going to kill me. I couldn't hardly breathe, and I was trying to get my breath. And I remember what should I do? Should I lower this bar and jump and run, or should I fire on this thing? It was a tough decision. I really didn't know what to do. And then about that time, this thing lets out the most horrific scream, roar combined that I've ever heard. I've never heard one like this again. And I've heard these creatures do this, but not like this one did. It was the longest, like, howl scream. It went on, it seemed like, for 5 minutes, but I'm sure it was probably more like 25 seconds. And it echoed so loud down that hollow. I thought, well, this is it. I'm done. This thing's coming across. It's going to kill me. And I was just ready. I pulled my gun up. I pulled the hammer back. I heard it click. And I said, I'm getting one shot before it gets me. And about that time, it turns. It walks away from me. It stops one time. It looks right back at me and shows me its teeth again. And I watched it walk away into the hardwoods. It just slowly walked. It wasn't in a hurry. It only looked back at me that one time. I watched it walk probably 50 yards into the thick hardwoods and underbrush. I wasn't going to take 15, 20 minutes to climb down that climbing stand. I lowered the bar. I jumped out of the top of the tree stand. I landed on the side of that hill at about a 45-degree angle in the leaves. I slid all the way into the creek. I had my gun above my head. I got water up to my waist, and I took off running up the side of the hill that I came in from. I looked back. I did not see it. I was so winded by the time I got to the top of the first hill, I had to stop for a minute to get my breath. And I took off running down that side of the hill, going towards the second hill, and I'm almost halfway up the second hill. I'm looking back the whole time to make sure this thing's not coming after me. And standing on top of that hill, I just come down. There it stands right next to a tree. It's looking right at me, just staring at me. And all that did was kick adrenaline in. And by the time I got to that second hill at the top, I don't know how I did it, but I didn't have any way to breathe hardly. But I kept running. I just kept running, looking behind me. I didn't see it. By the time I got down the bottom of the third hill, I just stopped and climbed this barbed wire fence. I jumped it. I was running as fast as I could, and it's on a steep 45-degree angle with the fence there. I jumped the fence. The bottom part of my pants leg caught the top of the barbed wire and ripped it all the way up past my knee and cut a massive gash in the side of my leg. I didn't even know I'd cut myself. I just kept running across that sage field looking back, and I didn't see the creature. I didn't see it coming after me. And by the time I got to my grandfather's gate that went into his backyard, I opened it, reached through and locked it back, and ran up into the grass onto his back porch and ran through his back door and reached back out and locked the screen door with a hook and slammed the door and looked out the window to see if this thing was still coming. I didn't see it anywhere, and I was so out of breath I could hardly go, and I ran into the right of the living area. My grandfather was sitting in on the left of the living room, and I went over and sat in the corner of the living room, the front corner, between a pot-bellied stove and the wall, and I was just completely out of gas. I just sat down. I couldn't talk. My granddad was just kept saying, "Boy, what's wrong with you? Boy, what's wrong with you?" And I couldn't get my breath, and I finally got my composure together. I got up, went into the kitchen. I got me a glass of water. I came back down and sat on the couch next to where he was at. And he said, what's wrong with you, boy? You look like you've seen a ghost. And I said, well, I seen a monster in the woods. And he said, a monster? There ain't no monsters. And I said, well, let me tell you what this thing was. If it wasn't a monster, I don't know what it was. But it was the most meanest, evilest, ugliest thing that I've ever seen. And I described it to him. My granddad went, oh, you seen a Woodbooger? I said, a Woodbooger? I said, I've been on this farm with you all my life, and I've never heard of a Woodbooger. And he said, well, never told you kids about them, because if I'd have told you, you wouldn't have hunted, you wouldn't have camped, you wouldn't have spent the night in the barn, you wouldn't have had a good time with your friends and your cousins up here. And he says, I've seen 4 in my lifetime. He said, I've heard a lot more. He says, you know them screams you hear at night that you used to ask me what that was? And I told you it was just an old catamount. And I said, yeah, what's a catamount? He goes, oh, don't worry about it. He said, that's what you were hearing, was one of them Woodboogers. He said, they don't harm you. They're very territorial. You get in their area and they don't like it at all. And that's probably what you did. My fault. I should have told you. Didn't think I should have known they'd probably be over in there, because nobody's been in that area in probably 30 years. And he said, they ain't going to harm you. They just real territorial. He said in the wintertime they get hungry. They come to the chicken house here and they'll take 3 or 4 chickens and they'll put the gate back where the gate was and block the hole where the chickens come out, and they'll leave a little pile of rock and sticks like they're paying for them. And he said they've been around here as long as I can remember. My people, my granddad, my dad all knew about them, and some of them are a little aggressive, but they don't never known them to harm anybody. And that was pretty much my first sighting. It took me. I didn't hunt. I didn't ever hunt again. What little bit of hunting, I take that back. What little bit of hunting I did do was out of my truck in one of my fields that I owned, or one of my grandfather's fields. I didn't go in the woods for 7 years, and I don't scare easy. I'm a guy that does not scare easy. I've been around bears, hogs, everything you can think of. Had them chase me. But this thing was nothing like I'd ever seen, and had no idea that something like that even existed. And it changed my life completely. I was never the same after that. It was definitely life-changing experience. And my friends came in later, and one of them had got a deer, and they were hanging it in the tree and skinning it out. And I went out, and they said, everybody calls me Big D because of my size. Hey, Big D, did you do any good? I said, no, I didn't do any good. And I mentioned to them, I said, you guys ever seen anything up here that in the woods, some type of creature? And they said, what are you talking about? And I explained it to them. They said, no, we never seen anything like that. I said, I was just a question. I just kind of let it go. But we went up there a couple more years after that. I didn't hunt. I let them hunt. They were close friends of mine. I stayed in the house with my granddad, and that was the end of my hunting. So took me a long time to get over it. I had nightmares. Never had anything affect me like that thing did. And I had no doubt in my mind this thing wanted to kill me. So I got lucky to get out of there. But now as I look back, all the years of experiences I've had since then, if it would have wanted to kill me, it would have. And believe me, they are so fast. They're like a blur when they run. I've seen many of them. If it wanted to catch me, it could have. If it wanted to climb that tree, it could have climbed up there and pulled me right out of it. It was just trying to scare me out of its area. So that's pretty much my first encounter that got me all started in this journey on November the 6th of 1992.
Wow.
What, Daryl, I mean, that's such a impactful story. Yeah, it's so impactful. I understand why you had nightmares and why you didn't want to go back hunting again. I mean, just the way you describe its mannerisms, and it's showing its teeth and looking back at you, and you're going up a hill and you see it back up on the hill looking at you, and you describe that when it comes to gets chickens, it closes the hole, and the gate, it puts the gate back, so it's intelligent. That's really really really.
It also leaves sticks and rocks like it's paying for it. So a little pile of, he called it Indian money. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. It's a little rocks that look like money, like that's what my granddad called it, and that's what they left. And he showed it to me what they'd left, and there was that, a couple of funny looking sticks, and some other rocks that I'd never seen before. And I've seen plenty of Indian money growing up as a kid in a creek, but that's what they left that he had showed me several times. They'd leave it during the winter. They didn't take them all, just enough to probably survive what they needed for them and their family. But I guess certain times of the year it's a little bit hard for them to find food. But here's another thing too. The one that was on the hill, 100% belief now after all those years of all the research I've done and other creatures I've seen since then. That wasn't the same one. It was another one. These creatures, I've learned if there's one, there's three. So they're never alone. They've always got other ones with them, unless they're just a rogue male. And there are some of those out there. I've dealt with one of those before. 2020, I dealt with one for 2.5 months. But they're different than this one was. It was he was just trying to run me out of his territory.
So is there a difference between a Woodbooger and a Bigfoot? Is that just the name your grandfather came up with?
That's what they call these creatures in the South.
Okay.
This particular type of creature, I'd never heard of it myself. And back in that day, we're talking about a time when we didn't have shows like this. We didn't have groups to talk about it. We didn't have YouTube to look it up, or we didn't have Google up to pull up one of these things. It was a time when none of that was available, and I went to the library for weeks, different libraries, trying to find a picture of these things. And I found a picture at a library that said, the actual book said the top 10 Bigfoot that are out there. It had 10 different pictures of these creatures. And, you know, I realized then I'm dealing with a Bigfoot. I didn't know the Woodbooger was a Bigfoot, but, you know, of course, I had heard of Bigfoot when I was growing up, but I always thought they lived out in Washington State or British Columbia or Oregon or somewhere like that, not in Tennessee. And when I looked through this book, the weirdest thing, the second one, the number 2 in a picture was the Woodbooger. And it looked identical to what I'd seen.
What the one that you saw looked like?
It looked identical to what I'd seen, except
like the color, the fur, like eyes, like what? Can you describe that? The height, maybe?
Well, it was about 8 foot tall, and I judged that because when the drag rag I had hanging in the tree, it was about 8 foot or maybe 8 foot 3 inches roughly off the ground. Its head was at that limb, so it was around 8 foot or a little more, and it was a big creature. It had a huge upper body. And,
they're always big, buff, muscular. They're always really muscular. I heard. Like strong.
Well, it was not. You know, I've heard people say they look like bodybuilders, and I've seen a lot of Bigfoot and a lot of forest people over the years since then. And I've been very fortunate, and I don't know why I've been chosen to see these things. My grandmother always told me I had a special ability with creatures, and I don't know, maybe this is what she was talking about. My grandmother was Native American, Lakota Sioux Indian, and she was very spiritual and told me a lot of things about these things, but I didn't realize they lived in Tennessee. And this thing had, this face looked like black leather, is what it looked like. Black leather, but it had wrinkles, like lines in it. And it had, from about right here up, it had hair, and about right under the eyes, it started with hair down. But around his eyes and his forehead was black leather. And the picture that I found at the library, it looked identical, this picture. Whoever drew that picture had seen one of these creatures, because the only difference was the one in the picture had red eyes. The one I seen had black eyes. And so, it was the same colors, jet black, and his hands were like people's hands. They had hair on them. I could see its feet, not well, but in the leaves. And they looked like normal feet, and its body was huge. When it got down to below the knees, its legs were thin, but the rest of its body was huge.
Interesting.
And it was this creature must have had some type of injury, or it was born deformed or something, because one side of its mouth was kind of out of contortion. It's hard to explain. It was kind of like wrinkled. And I don't know if it had
maybe like a scar, maybe something.
Could have been, it could have had some type of energy some type of injury from some other type of creature or another Bigfoot. I don't know. But anyway, that was my first one, and it was difficult. If I hadn't bet the ones on the river 7 years later, I have no doubt in my mind I would have never recovered from that incident. I was never the same person after that happened. I was just, it even took part of my fun away. I couldn't be myself because I was thinking about these creatures, and I was always a woodsman. I hunted for years. I was big time into deer hunting, any kind of hunting, and but it was 1999 when I had my second encounter, and I can look back now, thank the good Lord I did, because that one changed my whole perspective.
Let's hear it. I want to hear that one too. Let's go.
I have a place that I fish on the Cumberland River in Tennessee. It's a very remote place between Nashville and Cheatham County, and it was a place that was real rural that nobody knew about. I had two friends, Dwayne and Donnie, that I went to high school with, played football with, and they had a cousin that worked at this plant on the river, and I don't know exactly 100% what it was. It was either a water filter plant, a water filtration plant for the city water, or a sewer plant. I don't know, some type of plant that they did those services in, and we would pull in there. His cousin worked there, and nobody could fish there, and it was in the middle of nowhere. Nobody would go down and fish there anyway because it's just too hard to get back in there. And you're a good ways from civilization of where I'm talking about. There's just not a lot of people down there, and we would pull in down there behind that plant. His cousin worked there, and there was a guy at the guard shack. He let us pull in the gate. We'd pull around back, and we would park. And there's a gate back in the very back, the left corner of the back of the fence. And you just raise the little latch up and walk through. There's a game trail from that gate that went all the way down through the woods and next to the river. And we fished down there. And nobody else fished down there, but they let us fish. We parked our vehicle down there, and I'd never seen anybody down there but us. And we fished down there quite a few times in high school, and a few times after high school, and I still had permission and a piece of paper that was signed where I could still fish down there. I had it for years, and probably still have it. But I went down by myself. It was late February, I believe, or I can't remember exactly what part of February, but it was the time of year when we catch crappie in Tennessee, or crappie, some people call them in different areas, and we go down to the river with a bucket of minnows, and at the place we went, I went down that trail. It was about 200 yards back into the woods, and then it was a clearing back there next to the river, and there was a sandbar next to a creek that ran into the river, and it ran all the way out to about the middle of the river, and when the water was at regular level, you could walk down off the bank. There's a lot of roots sticking out of the bank, so you walk down onto the sandbar when you caught a fish and reeled it in where you wouldn't get them tangled up in the roots. And the sandbar was easy. You could walk out a good ways and reel your fish in, and when the water's not high, or it's just normal level. And I went there that day, and I had a styrofoam bucket of minnows, and I hadn't been there in a few years, but I'd fished there many a times, and I'd never had anything happen. I never even seen anybody there. So there was no way anybody could get in there unless they worked at that plant. And I think there was maybe 4 or 5 people that worked there, and they never came back there. But anyway, I brought my minnow bucket in, and I had 3 rod and reels. I threw them out, and I had floats on them to try to catch crappie or crappie, whatever you want to call them. And it was kind of a cool, probably in the low 40s. It wasn't real cold, but it was real cool, and a sunny day. And I put my poles out, and I got a bite on one, and I ran up there and got it, and walked down the sandbar and reeled in the fish, and went back and hung it on a stringer and put it in the water, and went back up to where I had a 5-gallon bucket that I carried my stuff in, my tackle box and all the stuff I wanted to carry, including the minnow bucket would fit down in there, and I would carry that with my poles to come in. But the 5-gallon bucket I turned upside down, and I set it against a tree, and I would sit on the bucket and lean against the tree. That was my seat to fish with. And I get back up to the tree and sit down on the bucket and reach over to get a minnow, and my minnow bucket's gone. And I'm thinking, I'm looking around, there's no wind. It's a cool morning. The water's at regular. It hadn't had a lot of rain or anything. It's real muddy through there anyway. It stays muddy. It's damp. And that game trail's got all kinds of tracks in it. Deer tracks, raccoon, any kind of track. And it goes to the left of me is a huge patch of kudzu. I don't know if you know what that is or not, but it looks like it's called kudzu here in Tennessee. It looks like vines, except they're real thick, and they're so thick you can't see through them. It's just piles and piles of them. And that game trail goes through the middle of that kudzu, and you have to get down on your knees to get. I'd never been back in there before. The furthest I'd ever been is where I was at. But you could go through there if you got on your knees and crawl through there. But I never had done that. And the minnow bucket was sitting next to the tree, and I was looking around for my minnow bucket. How could my minnow bucket just disappear? And I looked around. I couldn't figure out what had happened. I looked in the water to make sure it hadn't fallen in somehow, and I never found my bucket. So I was a little discouraged. I couldn't figure it out, and I started thinking, is somebody in here taking my bucket? So I gather all my gear up in my bucket, and I head out because I have no minnows. So turned the one fish loose that I caught and headed out. And the next week, I came back. It was on a Sunday. It had been raining, and it was a little windy, and the water was high. I could not see the sandbar. I remember it so well because it's a little difficult if you can't get out on the sandbar, because if you catch a fish, there's a lot of roots sticking out of the bank where your line's hanging over, and you'll get them all tangled in those roots. And same process. Set my fishing poles up and put a minnow on and threw out there, and I'm sitting on the bucket and catch a fish, going down and put it on the stringer. I caught another fish, going down, I come up and got another minnow, put it on the stringer, and I'm having a pretty good start. And then I catch another fish, and I go down to get that fish and put it on, and I came back up. My minnow bucket's gone again. And I'm starting to think, now this is a little strange because somebody's in here. There's a kid in here, a person in here, and now the whole back of this place is fenced with like 12-foot wire strands, like a prison fence. And it runs all down this bank, and all this kudzu is to the left of me, and it's just huge. This kudzu grows 20 foot. I mean, it's just so many thick vines you can't see through it. And they're all the way up against the fence. And I don't know how far that fence went down. I've never been back in there that far. But my point is, nobody can get in here unless they come through that gate, or they're coming through way down a couple of miles somewhere and coming through all that kudzu. So I don't know who would want to do that. But first of all, I can't figure out, what's happened to my minnow bucket. I mean, I just can't figure it out. And I start thinking, there's got to be somebody in here taking my minnow bucket. I looked around and it was windy that day. And it was it had rained the night before, and it was real wet and muddy. And I remember thinking, well, maybe it's the wind had blown the bucket. I was trying to find a reason for my bucket to be gone, trying to make myself believe that, but I didn't. Hang on one second.
Will you eat a grilled cheese sandwich?
There you go. Nice little sandwich. Nice. Get some food in you.
I've got my mom down here. She doesn't know I'm live on the radio.
That's all good. Hey, man, it's all good, man. Mother's a blessing, man.
I'm staying at my mom's right at this minute because I had to get here in a hurry. So
it's all right.
My studio is not here, and I don't have my studio set up here. So anyway, my point is, I went to the bucket. I couldn't find it. I'm kind of confused on what's going on. So I got all my gear again. Once again, went back to my truck and loaded everything up, and pretty much was just kind of puzzled thinking about this the whole week. How does my minnow bucket disappear? It was very strange, and I couldn't put anything. I only had one answer. It was a person, either a kid or somebody was getting my bucket. That was the only solution I had, and that's what it had to be.
Really?
How they got in there, I don't know, but they did. They must have been there before I got there.
You didn't have any kind of thought, like, because of your first experience, you didn't have any thought that it could have been one of those things?
Not at all. Not at all. I wouldn't even have been there if I thought there was one of those things.
Oh, yeah.
I can assure you, I didn't ever want to see one of those things again in my life. I never. And so the next week comes up, and I couldn't go. So a week after that, I went, and I said, so this time I had a styrofoam minnow bucket with the metal handle. I tied a rope around it before I went. There's a little rope, a little narrow rope. I tied it around real tight on the handle, and it was probably 20 foot, 25 foot long. And when I carried my shotgun, I had a 410 single shotgun I carried with me. and carried all my stuff, went down there, set up my bucket against the tree, took my minnow bucket, set it on the ground, tied the rope around the tree, and made a knot where it couldn't be untied. And this way, if something got my bucket, I could at least have enough time to see what it was getting it. So, regular thing happened. I got my fish. I had my poles out, and I was ready to catch fish. I catch a fish. I walk down back again. The sandbar's out of the water. The water is regular level. It's probably 30 degrees. It's real cool. I remember being how cold it was that morning. I had a coat on. I walked down the sandbar, reeling the fish, come back, put it on the stringer, go back up. Right before I get to where I set on my bucket, I look and my minnow bucket's gone. Well, the rope is tied around the tree. It's stretched real tight down that path, down the game trail that went into the kudzu. It's down in the kudzu. The bucket is stretched. I can see the edge of the bucket, but it's pulled tight with the rope. And I went and grabbed my 410 shotgun, walked over toward that area, and I remember really well, I said, whoever you are, you better come out because I'm fixing to start firing. Oh, and I didn't hear anything. And I said it again. I didn't hear anything. So I set my shotgun down. I crawled up into there. You had to bend over real far because it was so thick. And I was going to grab my minnow bucket. And I looked in front of my minnow bucket. In front of my minnow bucket up to the left was another minnow bucket laying in the kudzu. Over to the right, real close to where this bucket was another minnow bucket. There was the two minnow buckets I'd lost the week before laying in that kudzu stuff. And I crawled over and grabbed both of them, threw them out there next to where my seat was, and started to pick that minnow bucket up. And when I did, the top on it was on the side of it, and the water had been sloshed out, and there was only one minnow in the minnow bucket. And I had like 5 dozen in there. I looked down in it, and I said, one minnow? That's what I was thinking. And I looked down next to the bucket where all that water had sloshed out, and there was a track. It looked like a person's foot. And I immediately think, okay, I don't know who you are, but you must be something wrong with you for sure to be in here 30 degrees barefooted. And I grabbed the bucket. I went back and set it next to the tree. I only had 1 minute. I wasn't going to be able to do much fishing, but set it against the tree, had my shotgun in my hand, and I laid it against the tree on the opposite side of me where I could grab it if I had to. I went to acting like I was fishing again, and I was just sitting there. I didn't have anything on my line. I just had poles down there, no bait. And I act like I'm fishing. I sat there maybe hour and a half, nothing. Didn't see anything, didn't hear anything. About 2 hours in, I catch a glimpse out of my left eye, out of my peripheral vision to the left. And something is moving in that kudzu over there. And I look real quick, and I seen it go in like that. It was leaning out, holding a little tree, looking at me. And I looked again, and I said, oh, my God, it's another one of those things. I do not want anything to do with these creatures. And I grabbed my gun quickly, all my gear, my equipment, and I got everything together, and I got out of there as fast as I could go. And it wasn't a big one. It was a little one, a juvenile. We're not bigger than a juvenile, but it went back in the kudzu after I started moving and getting my stuff together. But I seen its head really well on its arm. And I said, I don't want anything to do with these things. I cannot believe these things are here on the river. Now, it didn't look anything like the one I'd seen in my grandfather's farm, but it still was one of those creatures. And I got all my gear.
What was different about it besides the size? What did it look different?
It was just a different looking creature. The one that I seen, the first one, my granddad called a Woodbooger, was just a different looking one. This one looked more like the number 4 or 5 picture, which was more like the Patterson-Gimlin type. It was more that type of looking creature. It didn't look like a evil looking thing like the first one that I'd seen. But I got all my gear in my truck, I loaded up, and I flew out of there. And I thought about it all week long. It stayed on my mind. I couldn't sleep that night thinking about it, and I just kept thinking about it. And all week long, I said, I'm not ever going down there fishing again. And I kept telling myself that. And by the next Sunday, I wasn't letting this thing run me off. So I was going back. So I didn't have any minnows, carried all my equipment with a dry bucket with my 410 shotgun and a sidearm pistol. And I went down there. I went back in, I set my equipment up, set the minnow bucket there, and never had any intention of fishing. I was just sitting there waiting this creature out. And I felt like if I didn't face this thing, I was going to be in this shape the rest of my life because I'd already been terrified over the other ones. And the only way you're going to get rid of fear is to face your fear. And that's what I made my mind up I was going to do. I had talked myself into it for a week, but I did it.
Amen.
And I'm sitting there, I'm tired of sitting. My butt's getting sore in that old bucket. And I done been sitting there for, it was over 2 hours. And I kept just out of my left peripheral vision, I was just hoping I could see something, but I wasn't seeing anything or hearing anything, and I'm thinking, well, maybe these things are just coming through here on occasion, and I'll wait a few more minutes, and almost at the 3-hour point, I was just about ready to leave. I seen it, and it was watching me, holding onto the tree. It was just bent over just a little bit, looking at me, and it would go back in. And it seen me looking at it, and it went back in. That I would straighten up, and it would bend over and look again. And I would straighten up, and it would go. This thing was watching me, and I was watching it. And I started talking to it. I said, I'm not here to hurt you, and I don't want you to hurt me. And I know you're not the only one here. And, of course, it didn't say anything, but I was trying to communicate with this thing, and it was about 5 foot tall when it finally showed me itself.
Oh, little one.
And maybe a little taller than that, but right at that, it was a female. And it would look at me, and it would go back in. And finally, it was just kind of squatted down looking at me. And I reached around and got my gun. I had a sidearm in my pocket, but I reached around and got my gun, and it looked at me when I got the gun. And I laid the gun down right in front of me. I said, look, I don't want to shoot you. I don't want to hurt you. Don't hurt me. And these things, I've learned so much over the years. They know what you're talking about. First of all, they know your intentions. These creatures 100% know your intentions. They know your heart. If you're a person in there trying to kill them, just as pure meanness because you want to kill them, you're not going to see one. If you do, you're lucky. So I was telling it, I'm not here to harm you. I just didn't know who was taking my minnow buckets and just communicated with it a little bit. So I stayed there. That was probably 12:30. Yeah, because I got there about 9. It was probably right around that area. I stayed there till dark that day. About 3:30 or 4 o'clock, another one came out. And it was behind this one. It was about the same size. Both of them were solid black. And this one was looking over the shoulder at the other one. And I started trying to communicate with them. I said, I know you've got family here. Don't hurt me. I'm not here to harm you. And I just never got much out of them. They just stared at me and got all my gear and crossed the dark and headed on out. And I just made my mind up, maybe these things aren't all bad. Maybe some of them are just, better than the other ones. And this was about 30 minutes from my house where this happened at. And I started going down there every day or every other day. I was there. And I didn't bring my shotgun anymore or my pistol. I felt a little comfortable. I didn't think they were going to hurt me. And I started bringing them gifts. I never even heard of gifting at this time. I didn't know what gifting was. And I was gifting them a little different. I'd bring them some rocks, and I'd bring them some little toy soldiers. I brought them all kinds, anything I could think of. I would bring them something. Then I started bringing them food. But I didn't bring them food all the time, just once every couple of weeks. And, I became very close to these creatures. And the bigger one that I became friends with that watched these two, he was about 7.5 foot tall. And he came out behind them. And when I would come in, they would get so excited that they knew I was coming. I'd walk through the gate and I would say, "Hey, I'm here today to see you." And I would hear them whoop and holler, and they were running all in the bush and the kazoo. They were excited I was there, and I brought them food for nearly 5 years. I found I brought every kind of food you could think of, and their favorite food is cantaloupe. They love it. They'd rather have that than anything. They will not eat a banana. They will not eat it.
That's funny.
Their favorite meat is one of my favorites. They love cooked bacon. I bring them 2 or 3 pounds of cooked bacon on a plate. They don't want it thrown on the ground. They want it on a plate, and you push it over next. You push it over next to the kazoo, and you'll see their hand reach out and pull it in. And they absolutely love jelly-filled donuts.
Wow.
I found out that bread products were their favorite. I brought them a whole loaf of bread at different times, and they will take all the bread slices out of the bread, eat it, bring back the wrapper with the tie on it, and lay it down to refill it. So
that's interesting.
I had a little wood box I made, and I put it in the forks of the tree that I set against. I put it in 2 forks, and I would put their gifts up in there when I left, where they could get them when I left, and they would get them. And then they started bringing me gifts. They brought me 3 live catfish, still flopping. When I got there, they were already there. They brought me a half-gallon milk carton, a cardboard one that it looked like it had been in the river for a long time. It was one time a red and white one, but it was pink and white when they brought it to me. And it had sticks going through it on all 4 sides that formed an X when it come out. Each side had an X. And it had vines wrapped around that. And that was sitting in my spot. That was for me. They bought me all kinds of stuff. And I became really close to them. I trusted them. I trusted the big one. He became a really close. Him and the female, the middle one, I never became very. He didn't do much with me, but the younger female that I first met, she and I were really close. And one day I was bringing her a plate with a jelly-filled donut and pushing it over. I was only about probably 20 feet from her, and she was sitting outside the kazoo, and I would get down on my knee and push the plate over there because I didn't want to startle them. And but they learned to trust me, and that was the first time I'd ever touched one of them. And when I reached over to push the plate over, she stuck her finger out and touched my finger. And that was one of the coolest things that's ever happened to me in my life, the feeling it gave me. And then she touched my shoe. I had a tennis shoe on. She touched the tip of my tennis shoe and kind of wiggled her way back into the spot she was. And I realized that I'd earned her trust, and she had earned my trust. So I felt completely different toward these creatures. They were nothing like the first ones. And these creatures had large X's all in those woods there. And that was the symbol of their family. The X's was their symbol that was their family symbol, the X. And they would leave me little small X's on the trail. And the coolest thing that happened to me, we were so close, I camped out with these creatures.
Oh, wow.
I came in next to my tree, built a little fire, got my sleeping bag, rolled it out, and it was in the summertime, and I camped out with them 4 or 5 different times, and I would lay there on my sleeping bag and my little fire going, and they would be in the kazoo about 20, and they'd be looking over the kazoo because I could see them looking at me. They were seeing what I was doing, and I would try to talk to them, and I asked them many a time, What is your name? My name is Daryl. What is your name? My name is Daryl. I'm right in the dirt. There's dirt right in there when it got hot in the summer, and I could scratch it in a little bit and try to get some kind of communication going with them and learn from them and figure out. And I asked them numerous times, what is your name? My name is Daryl. And never got anything. I was a little disappointed because I knew that I had earned their trust to a certain extent. Now, these creatures have their own language. They understand our language. They understand native language, and they have they're super intelligent. They have some special gifts that it's just quite hard to even wrap your head around the possibilities of what they can do. But
those gifts that you say, I want to ask you a couple of questions. So I believe
sure.
Ron Moorhead and what was that other guy, Dominic, that he specializes on Dogman and Bigfoot, him. And then we had Navajo Ranger, what's his name again? The Navajo Ranger, Dominic?
Jonathan Dover?
Yeah, Jonathan Dover. He said that they all, like all three, including Ron Moorhead, they all had a similar story that these things like manifest in front of them. Like Ron Moorhead said, not Ron Moorhead, Jonathan Dover said that he saw this thing come out the ground and just manifest. And then I believe Ron Moorhead said like at one point this thing went invisible. Remember he said that, and it looked like a greenish color or something like that. Did you see any kind of things like that?
I know exactly the story that you're talking about with Ron, because
Yeah.
I'm very familiar with that one. I'm not sure about the other gentleman, but I never seen one do that.
Okay.
So I wish I had. I did see one walk behind a tree, a large, big tree, and there was nothing around the tree. It was just a tree by itself.
Just disappeared.
And it never came out. I don't know where it went, but it never came out.
That's interesting.
But no, I never seen one cloak right in front of me. You know, I never did, or go interdimensional. But you know, this went on for a long time, man. I was very close to this family for almost 5 years, and I would have stayed close to them probably for the rest of my life, because they had a very special meaning to me, because they completely took away the fear I had because of them, and I felt like I owed them something, and they really become my friends. It probably sounds crazy to some people, but they were like my friends to me. I really became close to them, and I started bringing them the coolest thing I ever brought them. I went to a drugstore and got them a little pack of plastic whistles, like you give at a birthday party. They got a little black string hanging on them, and you give them out to kids. I bought a pack of those, and one day when I was in there, I said, I'm going to leave these for y'all, and I hung them on the limbs around the kazoo. I think there was, I don't remember how many was in there, maybe 9 or 10 whistles, and when I leave every time, I would say, I got to go. Bye. I'll see you tomorrow or the next day. Because sometimes I couldn't get down there. So I always let them know if I wasn't going to be down there, so they know it was me coming in. And I'll see you tomorrow or the next day. And when I'm walking off, I'd say bye. And I would hear them in the kazoo. I only seen 3 of these creatures, the whole creature, but I've seen bits and pieces of other ones. And when I would say bye, I would hear bye, 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 bye.
Wow.
They were different byes. They were mocking me saying that. And I couldn't see which one was saying it, but I knew that some of those inside the kazoo, the large one especially, he had a different bye. It was real deep. And I figured he was probably the elder or the leader of their family. But I just seen bits and pieces of him, never the whole creature. And day or two, just a couple days later, I didn't come back the next day.
Hey, you went your volume went out, buddy. There you are.
Sorry about that. Am I back on?
Yeah, you're good.
Somebody tried to call me. I apologize. But I was coming through when I was coming through the gate. That this was 2 days after I left the whistles. I come through the gate, and when I come through the gate, walking down the trail, I always say, "Hey, I'm here," to let them know that it's me and not somebody else. And what do I hear? I hear whistles everywhere. They're blowing these whistles. They're blowing them straight ahead. The one's coming from across the river. These creatures are blowing all these whistles I gave them until I got to the spot and sat down. Then they quit blowing them. They're intelligent enough to blow a whistle, and nobody showed them how to do it. And they can already make, stick structures to a milk carton. They're very intelligent, and I think they have the ability to do about anything, and they're definitely as smart as people, and they are people. I'm 100% convinced. I asked them numerous times, "Where are you from?" And I said, "Are you from another galaxy?" And they went,
Up. Oh wow.
"Are you from another galaxy? In another planet? Is that where you're from?" Yep.
Interesting. Dominic, I know you want to ask about that because that's wild.
Yeah, I wonder if this is a reference to sometimes these Bigfoot are seen in close proximity to UFOs.
I've heard
And
that.
I wonder, yeah, I wonder if that has anything to do with that. When they point up, does that mean what the natives call them, the sky people?
Well, I 100% believe that they came from. I believe. Well, I'm a true believer in Dr. Melba Ketchum's findings on the Genome Project. So Dr. Melba Ketchum and I are very close. She's in my group, the only group she's involved in, and she's a very honorable, trustworthy person. And when you have over 100 DNA samples, including hair, blood, saliva, I don't know how they could be contaminated with that many DNA samples. And of course, the scientific community came down on her like a warlord. I mean, it was just terrible the way they treated her. But, the scientists don't want us to believe that these creatures are anything but an ape. And they're not an ape. They're a human hybrid. 100% believe that with all my heart. And I'm tired of people calling them an ape because they're not an ape. And, I know there are different kinds of them. I don't know how many different kinds there are of them. I believe I've seen 4 or 5 different types of them. Maybe 5. I know 4. And, when you come up with what Dr. Melba Ketchum had with Robin Haynes and Scott, my close friend, the late great Scott Carpenter, you come up with the DNA samples that they had, over 100, and it comes back 58% human female, 42% unknown creature in the data bank. I mean, how can you deny the fact that this creature is not part human and part from somewhere? I'm 100% believer there probably are from the star people, but I don't know. I don't have any evidence of that, but we got a lot of creatures out there in this data bank, almost every creature that we know of, and this was pulled up numerous times, and there's no match for the other 42% of the DNA.
Wow. Did the females you got to go look at? Would they have wide noses or skinny noses? They look more, like you said, look more human.
They look just. If you take a picture of the Patty film of Patty,
yeah,
this female looked like that, but in a smaller version, and it was black hair, not the brown hair like that one was. And matter of fact, all 3 of them were black. The bigger one did have some gray on him, a little bit of gray, but he was black. And it took me a long time. I did everything I could to communicate with these creatures and try to get a word or 2 out of them, because I knew 100% they could speak words. I knew they could speak English because they know what English is. They know when I would tell them something, they knew what I was talking about. And they already knew that answer before I got it out of my mouth. They know how to read. They know how to read your thoughts. And I don't know how they're capable of doing the things they are, but they have a very special ability that be very difficult for us humans to wrap our mind around, because it doesn't seem possible. And after all the years I spent in there, the last few months before I did never see them again, I went in one day and I'm passing their favorite food, the jelly-filled donut. I got them a fresh box, brought them in, pushing them over in a plate. And I said, "Please tell me what your name is." "My name is Daryl." And I'm bent down, pushing this donut over, not looking at them. And I hear, "Aleatha."
Wow.
And
Aleatha.
I went,
wow.
"What?" what? What? Did you say your name was Aletha? And she went,
Wow.
Oh,
and
interesting.
then the one behind it, the little one that been behind her forever, by what I understood from her sticks and stuff, she was trying to explain who he was, and she could have had the ability to talk to me. She just wouldn't do it. I don't know why, but she wouldn't. I don't think that was her little brother or whatever, but I never found out for sure. But by the sticks, when they put the sticks up in a Y form, it's supposed to mean family. So the one behind her, the bigger one, I'm just blown away. I'm sitting there going, did you say that? Did you say Aletha? And she went. And then I asked the one behind her, what, can you tell me your name? And he wouldn't say anything, nothing. He just real shy. He was shyer than the other ones. And I'm bent down and I'm going, thank you so much for telling me your name. I was excited. It was like a breakthrough. I thought, well, maybe I can talk and communicate with them more now. And I pushed over a donut to the bigger one in the back and I said, please tell me your name. And didn't hear anything. And I'm taking this box of donuts and setting them over next to me. And I hear Tobias. And I'm going, what?
Wow.
Your name is Tobias?
Tobias.
That's interesting.
That's
Wow.
the only
That's
two
crazy.
words I ever got out of them except bye and hi. Because I'd say, hey, it's me. Hi, I'm here. And I'd hear hi and I'd hear bye. But they had the ability, no doubt in my mind, to communicate more. I think they were afraid to communicate more because they were afraid I would mention it to the wrong person and somebody might harm them. And I really think that's why when I came in, I would always yell, hey, I'm here, because I didn't want somebody they didn't know coming through the gate and them thinking it was me and giving themselves and their location away. Because there's so many people that look to harm these creatures. So you just don't ever know. But that was the most astonishing thing that's ever happened to me besides them touching besides the female touching my finger at that time. So that's as close as I ever got to them. I never got to, hold their hand or nothing like that. But at least you touched my finger and my shoe. So, and I found out they had names. At least two of them did. Yeah. And it's amazing to me how they speak. It's a deep type voice, but it's human. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's all that stuff is something I never heard before. Never heard of anybody getting a word out of these things. Always just some growls. And I mean, Ron Moore had played some videos of him camping out at night, and it sounded creepy. The noises that I heard.
I know most everything you're talking about, and I have heard some other people. Paul Freeman, the great Paul Freeman. I personally think there are 4 or 5 videos made and are the best videos of all time of these creatures. And Paul Freeman's is up there. I rate his number 2 right behind the Patty film. And it's real close to a tie with the 4th of July with the female with the baby. So Paul Freeman, I'm pretty sure I'm correct that he heard him speaking. So I know Dave Longstreet had heard him speaking for years. They would talk to him from his cabin. So, but I mean, that's the only words I got out of him. Mary Green from Tennessee, who lived with the Bigfoot family for many years, her family knew him, and they had a Bigfoot that was injured on their farm, and they called him Fox. And she heard him talk. So they're capable. I don't know if all of them can talk. I have no idea. I wish I knew more. But I only know what I heard and what I experienced. And they have a lot of abilities. If they have the ability to take a 8-inch tree and twist it like a straw,
oh gosh,
they got the ability to talk. So I don't know what all special powers they have. If you believe in Dr. Matthew Johnson, Dr. J, and he's a friend of mine and in my group and has had tons of experiences, he said they have the power to heal the sick. So I don't know. They've healed people with cancer that he knows. So There's a lot of things that I don't know, I hear about, but the only thing I can tell you for sure is what I just told you. I experienced it with these creatures, and they were such close friends to me. They were like my own family, and I trusted them 100%. And they never showed me any aggression. They never tried to harm me. They were completely different than the first one I'd run into.
Yeah. So you stopped visiting them, or what happened with that?
No, I didn't. I would have never stopped visiting them. What happened was I went on vacation for 2 weeks, and I let them know ahead of time. I said I'm going on vacation. I'll be gone for a couple of weeks. I always told them before I left. If I didn't tell them anything, they knew I'd be back the next day or the day after. That was just routine. And I'd stay with them anywhere from 30 minutes to 3 or 4 hours. It just depended on what I had to do. And if I was working too, so I worked for myself, so I had a little more time. But no, I was on vacation. I took my family on vacation, and I went down there, and I was gone almost 2 weeks, and I was really worried about them. I hadn't been in there for 2 weeks, and they knew I was going to be gone. But I went down to the river, and I went down to see them. I was excited. I had them a box of donuts. I had them everything. I had a bag of stuff I was carrying them in, and I went parked my car, and I got out, and I noticed the gate was down. Instead of opening the gate, and they had 2 gates there, and they had a bar in the middle, and they had a little latch that locked both sides. You could open both and pull something bigger through there. Somebody had taken the gates down. One was laying against the fence, another one was laying against the fence, and the bar in the middle was gone. There was a big opening, and I thought, what is going on? This is strange. I started walking down the trail, and I see backhoe or a bulldozer tracks right there from a bulldozer or a backhoe. Something went through that gate. And I looked up, and all the kudzu was piled in a massive pile, smoking where they had tried to burn it. Trees were cut down. The whole area that they were in, a big area, not all of it, but most of it, that whole area had been just leveled. It was just dirt anyway, and trees and kudzu had been leveled, and there were stakes in the ground, like they were going to build something back there, like staked out. And I was just in shock. I started yelling for them, put my stuff down and hollering for them. Hey, where are you? I don't hear anything from any of them. I go back in there past where they had cleaned it out and walk back in there yelling for them. I went maybe 2 miles back in there, yelling and hollering for them, and didn't see them and hear them. The next day I got a boat. I went across the river thinking, well, maybe they come in here and they started, this place is going to build something here, because it was staked out like you do when you build a foundation. And I went across the river in a boat and walked around on that side over there, and I didn't see them or hear them. And this went on for 4 or 5 months, and even a year later, I'd go back down there and look for them. But I never seen them again. And the sad part was I found shell casings all around that area.
Oh man!
So I don't know if this is just what I figure happened. I figure that whatever this plan is, they were probably going to build some kind of extension or something extra or back there, and they walked in, and the construction people that were leveling that off where they could do that probably seen these creatures. They probably thought it was me, or they might have started blowing whistles. I don't know. And that would have really alerted them. What is blowing whistles back here? And I can assure you, these guys that had never seen a Bigfoot, they spotted one of these things that was going to scare them to death, and they're going to run right back and tell the authorities or the Tennessee Game and Fish or somebody, police officers, somebody. And I'm sure that they probably came out there and either fired at them and scared them and run them off, or they shot them and killed them, or maybe done something with them. I don't know. But I do believe, if 100% in my heart, over all these years I've worried about it, I feel a little responsible that they're gone. Maybe it might have been me that alerted them with the whistles, but I felt like if they were still alive, they would find me.
Yeah, that's kind of sad though, a little bit, right? Man, that's
Yeah.
sad.
Oh, I don't mind telling you. I'm a pretty tough old boy, but I've had a lot of tears over those creatures.
Oh
Yeah.
man, that's like
I don't
best friend.
know why. It's kind of hard to find answers. I actually, I over the not too long after that, I became a county. A commissioner, and then I became a mayor for 4 or 5 terms, and I did everything I could with the political ability I had to find out if anybody knew what happened to those creatures, and nobody ever said they knew anything about it or anything. So, and I'm sure they probably wouldn't tell anybody if they did kill them or extinguish them. So, I just hope that they tranquilized them and took them off somewhere and let them go. That's all I can hope for. So,
yeah, hopefully, man. That's wild.
It was probably one of the saddest days of my life when I seen that. So,
yeah, man.
I don't know. It looked so fresh. It looked like it only happened a couple of days. It hadn't been long because it was still smoking where they had burnt some wood and all that kudzu stuff was in a big pile and run over by some type of backhoe or bulldozer or whatever. It was still sitting there to the right. One of them was. It was a smaller one, but I just hope they didn't kill him. I've been hoping that for a long time now, since 2004. So it's
that's a little heartbreaking. I know, I could tell, man. It sucks.
Well, yeah. I mean, if they're out there shooting these things and they have human DNA, that's murder.
Yeah, that too.
In the sense, And when we had Ron Moorhead on, I was asking about a question. I framed it in a way of asking him, did he ever come upon like 6 fingers or 6 of toes? He said yes.
He did. He had a 6 toe. Yeah.
And I told him, I said, well, that's what the Nephilim had. And he's and I asked him, I said, so these things are looking. There's some of them look really, really human. And I asked him, is it possible that these creatures were mating with like maybe the natives of America in the past? Maybe that's how they got their DNA.
I've heard plenty of stories from the indigenous people, not my particular family, but other ones across the U.S. and even into Canada and Alaska that have said, of course, they're called different names up there. Most of them call them the hairy man. My people call them the Chayitanka, which means great elder watcher of the forest. Oh, wow. And that's the way my people took it, that they traded with them, and they treated them like a people. In return, they got the same respect from them. But I do think that some of them are very aggressive. I think some of them will kill you.
Oh yeah,
I think some of them will probably eat you for dinner. And I do think that they probably did, and no doubt by the indigenous people, stories I've heard, they come in their villages in the middle of the night and took their women and children.
Yeah, so, I heard that too.
I'm sure that probably happened. I know all of them aren't the same. I know that for sure.
Kind of like human behavior, the same thing. Not every human's bad. It's kind of like,
exactly.
Yeah,
it's good, there's good and bad in everything. You can't relate just one thing. I've heard, I've seen 4 dogmen in my lifetime, and I'm more into dogmen now than I am Bigfoot.
Oh man, we got to hear at least one of those.
I know for a fact, not one. Now, one of the dogmen did not see me, but 3 of them did, and none of them ever tried to attack me. So, all the people that say they're vicious, they may be, but they didn't try to attack me. So
maybe you have a different kind of vibe, man, because those Bigfoots kind of took you in, trusted you, got an opportunity to know you, and then the dog man. I mean, like would you say one of your grandparents or someone said that you had like this gift or something that you could see the spiritual realm, or maybe you have maybe you have a higher frequency and these things can see it, and that's why they trust you. You know what I mean? You never know.
I don't know about it. Maybe so. And Ron thinks I do. And
Ron
has a very special ability on these things too. And Martin Groves has one of the most special abilities I've ever seen with dogmen. He can feel them when he walks in the woods, and he can tell me they're in there or they're not in there. I can tell him if there's a Bigfoot in there or not. I can feel them. But I don't know how it works, and I don't know how I was chosen to be a part of this. And it wasn't anything that I'd ever planned on doing, and I didn't think I'd still be doing it, 30 years later. So it's, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It really is. I, a lot of ways, I feel blessed to be able to relate with these creatures and see what I have seen. But in other ways, I feel like it's almost like I'm marked, and I don't necessarily want to be a part of them all the time, but I am. So,
yeah. It is a gift in a way. Like you said, it's a blessing. It could be a curse, depending on how you look at it. I know a lot of people would love to have your gift, because a lot of people let's put it this way. I know people that spend 30, 40, 50 years looking for these things and never see it one time. Maybe they'll see a foot track, but you got the opportunity to hang out with them. I mean, see, there's like I said, you might have some kind of, everybody's different. Some people could see, different things, and some people can't. Some people could feel certain things, some people can't. You obviously have some kind of higher type of a connection to that realm. I don't know what to, you call it spiritual realm, you call it vibrations, energy, whatever you want to call it. You obviously have, because you can feel it, like you said. So I think that's something that's not the first time I've heard before. It's very common. Like me, my whole experience in life, I have this podcast going on because I encounter some very demonic activity where I'm being thrown around in my room and getting beat up. So like, it changed my life too. That's why I'm doing a podcast. Just how this changed your life. Now you're doing this, this research your whole life. And that's why I'm into this podcast, because I've had my own experiences, and I can feel like, certain things. If I walk into, a room, or just, a room full of people, I can feel like, hey, that person might, I don't want to conversate with that person. I can just feel it. And then sure enough, oh, so-and-so's, went to prison for this, that. Oh yeah, well, there you go. And, just stuff like that. And another thing I wanted to ask you, you mentioned earlier in the beginning of the show, I don't know if you meant to use this term for the Bigfoot, but I think I remember you saying you saw the Woodbooger, and then you said you've seen forest people. Is this the same thing? Or are these forest people different?
The forest people are the ones on the river. I call them the forest people because...
What do they look like?
Well, that's what I was telling you. They're more like the patty-looking ones. They're more like those. But they were more of a people acting than the other ones I've seen. So their mannerism was more like people. And I've had a couple other families that I've gifted and have tried to befriend since that time, and I never had anything like what I had on the river, and I really don't think that I ever will again, because that was a very special
connection,
situation. And if I could, I would be back doing it again tomorrow morning. But the ones we met in Cheatham County, a couple friends of mine there, they were terrorizing a house, and the girl was scared to death and lived there looking into windows at night. And we met them and friended them, and but they were nothing like these. They were never friendly like those, like mine were on the river. And another family, similar but never friendly. They're just a different type. It's hard to explain. You have to be around them to know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
We call them the forest people. And a lot of other people that have experienced these creatures, the one who makes the X's in the woods, call them the forest people. And that was the name I came up with for that time. So
we interviewed this one of my good friends. Our name is Greg Romero. His guy has been through so many different things. He basically grew up in a satanic ritual abuse type of family, in a cult. Guy went through a lot of stuff, but he has some crazy story. I forgot who he was. I think it was in Washington too, of all things. And I'll send you the video later. It's like a 5-minute video where he's talking about what he saw. And he said when he was out there in this forest, I think he was truck driving at the time, I think, something like that. I forgot what his job was. But anyways, he said, long story short, he said he saw a bear running out of the forest into the main street, just running. He's like, what the heck is that? And then he said right behind it was a Bigfoot chasing this bear. And they started fighting in the middle of the road, and there's semis coming, and it seems like you said, these things are like humans. Like the bear didn't care the semi was coming, but the Bigfoot knew this thing was coming, and the Bigfoot obviously knew, if I don't get out of the street, I'm going to get destroyed. So the Bigfoot fought it off, pushed it, and the semi just smashed it, just obliterated this bear. And when he hit it, the guy he pulled over, my friend, hey man, you hit, you're all right, blah, blah, blah. He's like, man, you destroyed that bear. And he's like, did you see that other thing that it was fighting that ran up? He's like, oh yeah, that's a Bigfoot. He says, yeah, they're out here all the time. A lot of people that do lumberjack. Wow. It's like normal conversation out there. It's like, oh yeah, they're here all the time, like nonchalant, like it's like in the 90s. It's crazy stuff, man. Wow. Like how common it is, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I do think they're more common in certain areas. I do think they're all over the U.S. and all over the world, but they're called different things. And they're rain pendeck in certain areas, or the Yeti in certain areas. They're called a lot of different things, but they're all over the United States. I mean, they're in every state. Some state has more than others. It all has to do with their habitat, the fresh water, and the food. And where you find fresh water, plenty of food, and the habitat being forest and caves and mountains for them to hide in, you're going to find more of these creatures.
Wow. Interesting. So besides all those things, and Dom, you can ask a question out. This is my last question for what else have you encountered besides these Bigfoot? I know you said Dogman. Anything else? And if not, I would like to hear your most detailed Dogman encounter.
Well, my first Dogman encounter was in October of 2021.
Oh, recently.
And it was in Tazewell County, Virginia. I was in a little country store. My youngest daughter was living there at that time with her mother in Virginia, and I stayed up in that area quite a bit because I spent time with my kids. And there's a country store I was sitting in the mornings, and I would go in there, and it's just out in the middle of nowhere. It's a country store, 3 or 4 old farmers sit around a table, and they're mainly peanut farmers in that area. And there's an Indian gentleman who owns the country store, and I was sitting there drinking coffee in the morning like I did every morning when I was there, and I became friends with these guys. They were just good, nice, old, hard-working farmers, and I'm drinking coffee, and this man walks in the front door, and he has his little boy with him, and he walks up to the counter, and the gentleman who owns the store he's an Indian from India. He knows English. He doesn't speak it as well as he would like to. And this guy asked him, hey, do you know anybody here that knows anything about creatures? And he just looked at the guy like he didn't know what he was talking about. And the guy asked him again, do you know anybody around here that knows about creatures? Well, I'm sitting at the end of this table, probably 15 foot from where he's standing. And I turned around and I said, what kind of creature? And he didn't, because the Indian gentleman didn't really understand what he was talking about. And I walked over to the counter and I said, what kind of creature are you talking about? He said, I don't know. My aunt, me, my wife, my daughter, and my son live with my great aunt. And she has goats, and there's a creature that is coming from the woods at night, and it's killed all of her goats.
Oh, wow.
And I said, well, what does it look like? And he said, I have no idea. I haven't seen it, but I can hear it howling. And I said, well, it sounds like maybe coyotes or a wolf or something. He said, I don't know what it is. He said, I'm just trying to find somebody to help us find out what this creature is. And he said, will you help me? And I said, well, I'll come out there and look. Where do you live at? And it just happened to be this guy was like almost 3 hours away. It was a long way. He was coming through that area to buy some feed. And I said, well, that's too far for me to drive today. Give me your address, and I'll drive out there tomorrow. And I don't have a lot going on tomorrow. And I drove out there, and I lost GPS. I lost on the way out there because it's way remote. I went back, and I called his cell phone number, and he answered, and he met me not far from where I had to go to his farm. And I followed him back, and you go across a creek to go to his farm. You have to drive through a little creek. You go up a little embankment, turn to the left, and it goes to the farmhouse. And I followed him with my truck and to the farmhouse and get out, and he says, over here is the barn where the goats were. I followed him over there, and and it's real wet, where it's real nasty looking and wet where these goats were. You can see tracks very easily, and he said, "Here's the tracks," and I knew immediately what it was, and I knew it was a dogman, and I'd seen dogman tracks before at the LBL, and there's two different kinds of dogman tracks. They're all the same, and he asked me what it was. I didn't want to scare the guy. He had two children, little boy, I think that was 7 or 8, and I think the little girl was younger than that, and his aunt was scared, and him and his wife were living there with her, and he said, he said, if you look at this little road that comes here, if you'll park up on that hill there, like you're going out toward the creek we crossed, keep going straight, there's a gate, open it, and park up on top of that little rise, and you can see this field right here, and it was a field that came to that barn. It was probably 500 yards long. It was way off long, and it was probably maybe 100 yards wide. And the goats had been living in there for years, and this thing had killed, I believe, 12 goats in like a month. It was coming back. Wow. And I never seen the goats to know what kind of damage was done to them. They'd already hauled them off, but by what he had told me, it had ripped their neck out and fed on the body. Right. So he told me to go up there if I could sit up there, and he wanted me to find out what kind of this creature this was, because he was worried about his kids. He'd already called the game and fish. He'd already called the sheriff. The sheriff said there was nothing they could do. Nobody would come out. They were dead. It was probably some kind of coyote, or he gave me the story they told him. So I parked up on that little rise, and I spent almost a month up there. I'd go home and go back the next day. Sometimes I'd go in the evening. Sometimes I'd go early and go in the morning. And I was just about gave up. I've been going up there long enough, and it wasn't cheap to drive, 3 hours.
Oh, yeah, hell no. That's your whole day too.
Yeah, and then, the guy was real thankful, and he was very nice to me, and actually did end up giving me a little money for doing that for him. And
that's nice of him, man.
I didn't really want any money, just enough to cover my fuel, and that was my main thing. But anyway, I was just about gave up. It was a Friday evening. I've been coming there for 3.5 weeks, and I hadn't seen nothing. And I figured, well, they may have left because there's no more goats. They're all dead. That's what I was coming to that conclusion. And that Friday evening, I'm sitting on that hill. I'm parked kind of catty corner with my truck. I've got my window down. I've got a pair of binoculars looking out toward the edge of that field at the top of a wood line. It's like 400 or 500 yards, the length of this field, so it's a pretty good distance. And I spot something in the corner of that wood line, right where the fence met the field. And I get my binoculars and look, and I can see a creature. I can't tell exactly what it is, but I can see it's a creature. And I seen it cross the fence. And this field had sage grass, like brown grass in it. It was fall of the year. And it was, 2.5, 3 foot tall, and it was in spots where the creature, this thing took off running down this field, and it was coming right toward I was over this rise. It was coming right toward the corner I was overlooking. But it would go between the sage grass, and I couldn't see it when it came back out. But this thing was not running like a dog. It was galloping like a horse.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't know what it was. I wasn't sure. I could see the color of it, but it would go in between the grass and come back out, and I'd catch a glimpse of its head, and then it would go in between some more grass. Well, it ran all the way down, and then the grass was gone. There was an open patch, probably 100 feet from there to the corner of the fence I was overlooking on this rise. And I seen it. It was just kind of like gallop running, and it stopped right at the corner, right below me. I'm probably 75 feet from this thing. It stops right at the corner of the fence. It stands up on 2 legs. It takes one leg, puts over the fence, and the other leg, and walks off into the hardwoods. It looks right in my direction, but it never looked at me. Had never seen me. And I've seen this thing. It looked like a massive black German Shepherd.
Oh, wow.
Is identical. It looked just like a German Shepherd, except it was 3 times the size of a large black German Shepherd. It was about 6 foot tall, and when it walked over that fence, when it stepped over the fence, it stepped over it with authority, if you know what I'm saying. It was this thing was not scared of nothing. And that was the first dogman I'd ever seen. So it was almost dark, and I wasn't going down there in the dark looking for it. I came back the next morning. I got there early, right about daylight. I had my backpack, and I had a camera, a really good camera. I had my sidearm, a 357 Magnum, and I had a 270 automatic rifle. And I went down, crossed the fence, went right down to where it had crossed the fence that day before. I could see the tracks and the damp, like it was kind of like a mossy area right there around the fence.
Yeah.
I could see the indentation of where it stepped over. And I followed that trail. I walked down in there probably a couple 100 yards down in that thick brush, and it went all the way around to the side of a bluff. And there was a huge bluff right there that overlooked a field, and it was 40, 50 foot tall and overlooked a valley. And right around the right side of that was this thing or these things, or it looked like there was more than one of them because I could see tracks. They had dug out up underneath that bluff, and it was an opening where they were going up under there.
Oh, crazy.
And I could see tracks in the dirt, and it looked like more than one. And I shined a flashlight up in there and looked around. I didn't see anything or hear them or see one. I found bones everywhere. Like deer bones that were old, just laying around. A lot of different bones. And I hung around for a little while, and I got a little nervous and said, I don't need to be down here by myself, and kind of headed on out. I didn't really see anything that I could show the guy, except I didn't want to scare this guy to death anyway. But went on back, got to my truck, and I'm backing up, and I'm going to pull down to his house. About that time, a Virginia State Game and Fish truck crosses the creek and blocks me from getting to his house. And he gets out, and he rolls his window down first, and he says, "What are you doing up here?" And I said, "Well, I'm up here scouting out. The gentleman who owns the farm told me I could scout out some creatures up here." "What kind of creatures?" And I said, I didn't want to tell him a lie or tell him what I was looking for. I said, just certain things." He goes, "What kind of weapons you got on you?" I told him what I had. He wanted to see my hunting license. I said, "I'm not hunting. I'm just looking around." And, "Well, why do you have guns?" And, he had questions. And I said, "Well, I just carry them for protection. You never know what you're going to run into out in these woods." And he said, "You got a permission slip to be here?" And I said, "No, I don't." And he said, "Get in the truck with me." And I got in his truck and went up to the house. And the gentleman said, "Yeah, I gave him permission to be here. I told him he could come out here and look around. We had something killing my goats, my aunt's goats, and he was trying to find out what it was." And he looked at me really funny then, the game warden did. Looked at me real funny because I hadn't told him that's what I was doing. Didn't tell him I was or wasn't doing, but he didn't. He looked at me very funny, and I got back in his truck. He said, "Okay," so he knew I was okay. I had permission to be there. I get back to my truck, and he says, "Let me tell you something. Best thing for you to do is get in your truck, drive out of here, and don't ever come back."
Wow.
I said, "Why? What's going on?" He goes, "Well, it's really none of your business, but there's some kind of creatures killing people's livestock around here."
Oh.
I said, "I know. That's what I was here for. This gentleman asked me to do it." So I left. He followed me all the way to the interstate. And I called the guy back and told him what was I told him, I said, don't let your children outside the house without you watching them and being with them. And don't ever let them out there at nighttime. And he took my word for it. And that was my very first Dogman sighting I'd ever seen. And the next sighting I had was in 2023. Martin Groves and I, one of my best friends and teammate, were in the LBL on the 29th anniversary of the Dogman attack that almost killed him and his friend. And that's why we were there. We were going back to the spot where it happened. And we turned on this gravel road. And if you've ever been to the LBL, the land between the lakes of Tennessee and Kentucky, it's 177,000 acres of just in the middle of nowhere. There's some campgrounds scattered out in there. And there were some massive campgrounds at one time that had stores and everything in them, but they've since closed those for some strange reason. But this area is so vast that you have a main parkway that goes through the whole park from the north end, from the south end to the north end. And it's called the Trace. It's a 2-lane paved road that people travel through to Cadiz, Kentucky, or wherever else they're going, and goes right through the middle of the park. But when you turn off those roads, there's hundreds and hundreds of roads back in there, dirt roads, gravel roads, that just go for miles and miles. And if you don't know what you're doing, you'll get back in there and get lost. And you won't be able to find your way out of there. But Martin knows the park better than anybody I've ever known. And he and I both have been going there since we were kids, fishing and hunting. But we mainly just research there now. And that particular night, we'd been there 2 nights. We hadn't seen anything or had anything happen. And we were going into that area that 29 years before, not to the day, but to the year, 2 Dogman creatures and 2 Bigfoot. The 2 Dogman tried to attack and kill Martin and his partner.
Wow.
And we were going back there to that spot because I'd agreed I'd go with him, and he hadn't been back there since. And we're on our way back there. Now, this gravel road we turned on is just, I mean, you can't drive fast. These roads are holes in them, bumps, you'll bottom out. They're just rough roads. And if you can do 1 or 2 miles an hour, you don't want to tear your truck up. And he had a nice truck. We're just barely moving because you got to get back to the very end of this road. Then we stop and we get out and walk for miles. And as we're going back, we get to this one spot, and my window's down. His window's down. We're just having a regular conversation quietly, no radio on. I got my arm hanging out the window, and I look over into this creek bed to the right of me, and I've got a really bright flashlight. Martin has a really bright flashlight laying on the console of his truck in the middle. I see this thing laying in this creek bed next to a culvert. And this is in the middle of nowhere. It's very rural. You may not see a car back there for a week. And it's this reddish, bluish looking mist. And it's just like a mist of the shape of a creature laying in this creek bed. And this thing's only 4 or 5 feet from me. I can reach out and touch it. And all of a sudden, it's the whole entire shape of a Dogman. It's laying there looking at me. I can see it's like it's going to pounce on me, like a cat jumping on fire. It's in that position, like it's going to jump in the window on me. And I looked at Martin, and by the time I was about to tell him, "Are you seeing this thing over here?" he already said, "I see it." And we stopped. And this thing is just laying here looking at us. It's got a head about half the size of our truck windshield. And it has mane around its neck like a lion. It's got teeth, and its eyes are just glowing like tiny flashlights, clear, tiny flashlights.
Yellow or red?
And it's just, they're clear, white.
Oh, no.
And they're just glowing and just, this thing's just staring at me with like a little grimace like on its face. And I can see its whole body. Its hair, with the whole body was silver gray colored. And the very tips of the hair on this thing were almost like lit up. It's hard to explain. And this thing's looking at me like it's going to jump right on me and eat me up. And Martin, about that time, starts choking. He got zapped. This thing infrasounded him. He can't hardly breathe. He says, "Bubba, I can't breathe." And his neck was swelling. His throat was swelling together and his tongue was swelling up. I'm in a panic thinking, well, I got to help Martin. I get zapped. I can't hardly feel my legs. I can't hardly move them. And I got this compression on my chest. Feel like somebody's standing on it. And a massive headache. And I'm a little delirious. He's over here yelling, "I can't breathe." Well, I start praying. Help me, Jesus. Don't let anything get us. And I start pulling out of this thing that I'm in. And I start getting a little feeling back. This thing gets up. It walks. It didn't walk. It glided like around the side of my truck. It went by my window, went around the back of the truck. It went behind the truck and went up the side where Martin was at, but over to the left into a field. I reached down and shined my light right on it. I could see this thing looking at us. Martin's still coughing and saying, "I can't breathe." And I said, "Let me drive and get us out of here." And he says, "No, just help me get turned around." And we got him turned around. This thing is walking, and this is the strangest part. This looks like a huge wolf-looking creature. It's silver in color, silver gray, but I can see through it. The light goes through the creature. It's transparent at the same time. And I'll watch it with my flashlight to make sure it's not coming back, because I'm worried that Martin's is in a vulnerable situation. If it comes back and jumps on him, the window's down, and we finally get him turned around. But this thing goes up the hillside. I lose it. I can hear it breaking limbs and sticks and everything as it goes up the hillside. And we finally get turned around. I get him out of there about 1.5 miles down the road to a place where a deer check-in station is, and there's 3 big street lights and a restroom. I get him out of the truck and get him sitting down and get him a drink of water, and he's starting to already feel better. Some of that's wearing off, but he was sick for 2 weeks after that, sick. And I was not. I was pretty good shape by the next day, but I still felt the remnants of it. The weird thing was, whatever this thing did to us, the truck stunk so bad that you could not literally sit in the truck with the windows up. You had to have all 4 windows down, the back and front. It was the worst smell. I can't smell as good as he can because I don't have my ability since I got COVID. But he couldn't hardly stand to breathe it. That was what was causing a lot of his problem. It wasn't just the swelling of the allergic reaction he had. It was a stench from this thing. And however it did that, I don't know how it did it, but it did. And it also left some type of film all over the truck, like it sprayed it with something. He took it to 3 cleanup shops, had it buffed, waxed, and everything, and it's still today got remnants of that stuff on the hood. So I don't know. I can't tell you. I've never seen anything like that. And
I've never heard.
There was the craziest and small town monsters, which Seth Breedlove and those guys and Alexander Petticoat. They've been so great to us. Heather and all them. They did a documentary on that about Martin and I, that actual sighting in 2024. There was actually 3 of them done on that one. And if someone wants to watch it, they can look up Dogman, Bigfoot Wars. That's part of one of them. And the other one is Dogman Encounter, the LBL with Martin Groves and Darrell Denton. And but I've never seen anything like that. I don't know if it was a cross between a real dog man and one going interdimensional or what it was, but we both seen it, and it was I thought for sure it was going to jump in the truck.
Oh man,
because it You know how a cat looks when it's going to jump on a
Yeah,
mouse or
that's why I
something?
went like this. Yeah,
That's the way this thing looked. I thought it was going to jump in the window, but it
that's
didn't. And that's what I was saying earlier. I've seen 4 of these dogmen, and none of them have tried to attack me. Now, the first one didn't see me, but the other 3 that I've seen me, and none of them tried to attack.
wow.
I don't know why. And, you know, I know other people have seen them and they haven't tried to attack. But then I know people that have seen them and they were vicious and tried to get to them. So
That's fucking crazy, man. And one thing that I recognize in this whole story you told me, I don't know if this just happened to stop coincidentally, but when you said you prayed to Jesus Christ, this pain that it was giving you kind of subsided. So if that was the reason why it stopped, to me, that tells me there's some kind of spiritual demonic force, because only evil spirits run away from the name of Christ. So I thought that was very interesting that that when you prayed to Jesus, this thing kind of let up. But Dominic, go ahead and ask your question. Your question you want to ask?
No, it sounds like it was probably some kind of interdimensional episode.
Here, you guys, I'm going
You have a mist going on. You have it like a transparency. You say.
yeah, you could. When I shined the flashlight, the beam went all the way through it onto a tree.
That's crazy, man. I've never heard that story before regarding the Dogman.
Well,
I
I've
mean,
never, since then, I've heard of a similar story from a gentleman, and I wish I knew his name, but I've heard a similar story of somebody that's seen one very similar to that, and in close to the same area. So, I don't know, you know, still today, I do know this much, you know, he was mentioning the fact of Jesus Christ. You know, I had a Bigfoot that terrorized my farm for about 2.5 months, a rogue male. And Scott Carpenter, the late great Scott Carpenter, told me that these creatures all know who Christ is. And even the ones on the river, when I'd ask them, do you know who Jesus Christ is? They knew what I was talking about. So these creatures, I know that you can rebuke any of these creatures in the name of Jesus Christ as long as you believe that he is the Savior in your heart. If you have that true belief, you can rebuke these creatures. I know that to be 100% true. And Martin Groves had told me years ago, that's how I knew about saying the prayer if I got zapped. I've been zapped 3 times. Twice by Bigfoot, once by Dogman. Martin has been zapped with me. Martin has been zapped at least 3 times by Dogman since I've been with him. I don't know how many times altogether. Ron has been zapped once or twice. And, you know, I know for a fact that they have this ability to do that. I personally think it's some type of radiation. I don't think it's like a whale does with infrasound, because this is so strong. It just jolts you almost like an electric circuit. And, but Martin Groves had told me years ago when they attacked him in his camp, he said, I was just laying there, Bubba, and I was just praying to God to give me my strength back. And I started praying to Jesus, and I felt my limitations coming back to normal. So that's why I did that. I remembered him telling me that. And I've always remembered that when I go into the woods and in case I encounter something that's trying to demobilize me.
wow, that's a very impactful story. And I recall Scott Carpenter seeing or taking a photo or video of a Bigfoot coming out of a portal.
Oh yeah, I've actually got the original photo.
Yeah, so that tells me that these things had to be coming from, well, maybe some of them come from another dimension.
I 100% believe that. You hit it right on the head. You know, we don't even know how many dimensions there are. We can see
Well, yeah,
3.
right.
We know a dog can. Some animals we believe can see into the 4th, but there may be, you know, 5, 6, 7 dimensions. Who knows? But I know for a fact that these creatures, all of them that I've been around, that I've had to use the word Jesus Christ, or even ask them, the ones on the river, they knew who Jesus Christ was. So I don't think all of them. I personally do not believe that Bigfoot is the Nephilim. I really don't. Now, Scott Carpenter, the late great friend of mine who helped me rebuke a creature I had bothering me, he believed they were the Nephilim. So everybody has their own right to believe whatever they want to believe. I have no problem with that. But I believe the Nephilim was like what they found in the Kandahar giants in Afghanistan. Those things were 15, 16 foot tall, red haired giants. And they killed quite a few of them. The U.S. troops did. So that's what I believe the Nephilim was. So that's my opinion.
That's right on. That sounds good to me. I mean, everyone's got their own, opinions about what is what, but we do know that they exist. We do know that Bigfoot's out there, Dogman, and God knows what else is out there. And
I've never seen an alien. I have seen what I believe to be some type of UFO. I don't know what it was, but I've never seen an alien. The only other creatures I've seen a crawler in the LBL. Martin Groves and Martin Unley and I did in the LBL in March of 24. I've never seen one of those, and I hope I never see another one. This thing ran up a tree like a squirrel. It was crazy. But
a spider or something?
No, it's a crawler. Some people call them. I call them. They look like. They look like a human, a real skinny human, like really skinny, like bones. But they're white in color. And they have a weird looking eyes.
Slender Man. Literally,
the rake.
That's exactly right. The rake.
Yeah.
A lot of people call them crawlers, but I seen one of those in the LBL. 3 of us did. It ran right in front of me. I heard it coming through the woods in the middle of the night, and it ran right by me and ran up a huge tree. I mean, it ran up this tree just like a squirrel. It was unbelievable, and it looked like a humanoid figure, but it was so skinny. I mean, it was just strange. Yeah. And it got to the very top of this tree. I was trying to shine the flashlight on it and get a picture of it. And it kept going around the tree. Every time I'd get a light on it, it'd go around the other side. And Martin kept saying, "Get out of there, man. You don't know what that thing might do to you." And about that time, it starts clicking. It makes these clicking noises.
Oh, hell no.
At the top of the tree. And on the other hillside behind us, you could hear something else clicking back to it. It was communicating with something on the hill. So that was strange. That was I've never seen one of those before. So
that's crazy, man.
But they exist. I never thought I'd see one, but like I said, I hope I don't see another one.
Shit, I don't want to see that ever myself either. That sounds terrifying. Out of all the things you just told me, that sounds terrifying, man. I'm good on that.
Yeah.
We've seen some pretty strange creatures in the LBL. The LBL is a whole different world, man. It's it's the nicest, easiest going place in the world in the daytime, but when the lights go out, it is a different place. And
nothing good happens after midnight.
Well, I mean, lots of people go in there and don't have any problems in the LBL. I know plenty of people that's been in there for years. They had never seen anything. But then there's other people that go in there and won't go back. So, it just depends on where you're at. And we know some pretty rough areas that we go to that there are a lot of stuff that could be in there. And, it depends on what you're looking for. If you want to stay away from them, you need to stay close to a campground somewhere. But that would be my suggestion. Hillman's Ferry would be the safest place to be in the LBL. So, Hillman's Ferry's campground on the north end. So, that's what I would tell anybody if they want to go and not be frightened. That'd probably be the safest place. But we've seen some crazy things in there over the years.
Yeah, with that being said, we're gonna cut the show now. We've been on 2 hours. I don't want to keep it any longer.
Any last words, bro?
Yeah, you sound like you have a lot of more information. Maybe we can do another part some other time.
Sure, man. I'll be glad to come back on.
Do you have any advice for the people that go out there and looking for these things? What's your advice? Because a lot of people beg to see these things. They spend their whole life doing it. And I know some people may regret it. Not everybody has that kind of common sense and kind of connection like you have with these things. You know what I mean? What's your advice?
My first suggestion would be for anybody that was searching for the Bigfoot or the forest people or Sasquatch, whatever you'd like to call them. My first thing would be 100% know it's true. If you don't have the right intent in your heart and you're not there for the right reason, if you're out there to harm them or something like that, don't even go. Because if you do find one, they're going to run you out or harm you. But you got to remember, you don't ever find them; they find you, and they will 100% know your intentions, know if you're a good person or not. I would suggest grounding myself if I was new at that. I did that myself. That means sitting on a log when you first go in, take off your shoes and socks, say a little prayer, and let them know I'm here to visit you in your home. You go into the forest, that's their home. It's not yours. And you ask permission. I'm here to visit. I won't stay long. I appreciate the opportunity to see you. They can hear you. These things you can imagine, they can see 10 times better than we can, hear 10 times better than we can, and they got the strength of probably 100 times more than we do. So I'm sure their smell is the same way. They have the ability to smell us from. I have no doubt when you get out of your vehicle to go searching for these creatures, they already know you're there. So they've got little ones that do what I call spider crawling. They belly crawl, look over trees and see who's coming, and they let the other ones go. They're the best imitators in the world. They can sound like an owl, and it's not an owl. They can sound like crows. That's their number 1 and 2 defensive strategy creatures. At nighttime, they use the owls to let them know that somebody's coming, and the owls will call back to them, and they will sound less like an owl. The Bigfoot will. And in the daytime, they use crows. If you hear crows going crazy in an area, they're letting the Bigfoot know you're coming in. And the coyotes, they use them. They hunt with them. I've watched them hunt with them. They'll take the coyotes out in the woods. They'll find a pack of them. They'll let the coyote run the deer down. The deer's exhausted. Then the coyotes will take the deer down. Then the Bigfoot runs out of the woods, goes down and grabs the deer. The coyotes run off in different directions. Bigfoot takes what he wants from the deer, which he punches a hole right under their rib cage. Goes up inside the deer, eats the heart first, the liver second, all the innards, then pulls the tongue out, eats it. And if it's hot summertime and they need hydration, they'll eat the eyes. And then they'll leave the carcass for the coyotes to feed on. So, these creatures have a lot of abilities of what they can and can't do. But if they know you're a good person, they will allow you to have an association or a friendship with them, as long as they're the good kind. That's the problem you run into with Bigfoot or any creature. You don't know if it's a good one or a bad one. Some of them are bad. And then you run into a dog man out there that might be the same way. So, or a crawler. You just have to be careful. Never go in the woods by yourself. Always take somebody. Always take somebody. Always let your family member know where you went in and when you're coming back. Carry a personal locator beacon, because that way you don't have those have a satellite signal on them. If you get out in the woods and you're hurt or injured or can't find your way out, you push that button. It will pick up anywhere, and it immediately shoots to a zone where police and authorities can find you. Stay where you're at, and they can pinpoint exactly where you're at. Always carry some type of provisions in case you get lost or stuck out there. Food, water, a water straw, aluminum blanket, small stuff in a small bag. That would be my suggestion on anybody that's researching.
Thank you very much for that information. I hope a lot of people that heard this take that warning and really focus on that, because a lot of people think this is just like some kind of fun game looking for for mystical creatures like in the movies. It's not like that. But thank you again very much for coming on the show. And I also can tell, obviously, you're a believer in Christ, and I respect that too. That really gives me a lot of insight from when you prayed in those things, the power that they had, it went away. But anyways, once again, thank you again for coming on the show. I heard things from you that I never heard about Bigfoot before, like the whole thing connecting with them. And then the Dogman thing is wild, man. That's like a half demon, half whatever creature. That's like the craziest story I've ever heard about Dogman. Me and Dominic interview a lot of people, like, and a lot of them, the people that we interviewed, you know them, so you know we're talking to people that are credible. So thank you again for coming on the show. I'm going to end the recording right here, but don't hang up yet. I want to say bye to you properly once I get the recording off.
Thanks everyone for watching. Appreciate everyone watching.
Oh yeah, thank you, man. Thank you once again. So everybody, thank you for listening to the show. God bless everybody. Go ahead and like, share, subscribe to all our social media podcasts, but we will see you guys soon. Let me end this really quick. So
finally I feel alive and I know why, cause I'm giving all the glory to the Most High. They don't wanna hear the truth, that is no lie. If we ain't in the last days, then we're close by. The devil's trying to snatch your soul and it's not a game. You hear me saying Jesus Christ and it's not in vain. They might get offended every time I drop his name, but I'ma let them know that I'm not ashamed. That's right, I'm not ashamed of the gospel. Even if I know it'll be making them hostile. Thinking about the persecution of apostles. They want to see his people in the dirt with the fossils. You may be thinking that might sound extreme, but you gotta ask yourself, is this life what it seems? People suffering for Christ in this world full of schemes and agendas. Would you give your life for the king? Give it up. Martyrdom, yeah, that really is a thing. Better look it up if you don't believe, you know what I mean? We gotta try our hardest not to be so naive and be mindful of the children and people that bleed for the name of Christ. The only one that can save your life. He saved mine never once, gotta thank him twice. The amount of 1,000 thanks in a day, knowing I gotta give him more praise when I pray. Finally I feel alive and I know why, cause I'm giving all the glory to the Most High. They don't wanna hear the truth, that is no lie. If we ain't in the last days, then we're close by. The devil's trying to snatch your soul and it's not a game. You hear me saying Jesus Christ and it's not in vain. They might get offended every time I drop his name, but I'ma let them know that I'm not ashamed. Can't be content with just church on Sunday, or just going through the motions, cause one day I'ma have to give account for my time spent, and where my empty words and all of that pride went. Calamity bringing clarity. Seems like a good church these days is a rarity. 1 out of 7 in the book of Revelation. A perverse generation on the verge of devastation. A sign of the times, realizing that I'm in danger if I don't put my mind to the grind and do a work for the Lord. Every verse is a sword. Overseas there is people getting murked for the Lord. Imagining the whole church in the court, death itself shortly after rebirth in the Lord. Rapping for Christ like I wanna be his hype man, and I know opportunities have a lifespan. Finally I feel alive and I know why, cause I'm giving all the glory to the Most High. They don't wanna hear the truth, that is no lie. If we ain't in the last days, then we're close by. The devil's trying to snatch your soul and it's not a game. You hear me saying Jesus Christ and it's not in vain. They might get offended every time I drop his name, but I'ma let them know that I'm not ashamed.
The idea is trusting in God even when it doesn't make sense. In 2 Timothy 1 verse 12, this is why I am suffering as I am, yet I am not ashamed, because I know whom I have believed. I am convinced that he is able to guard what I have entrusted to him for that day. I am not ashamed, he says. I'm not ashamed to trust God with my life.